Sometimes the world only sees the moment someone breaks. They see the loud reaction, the sudden anger, the strange silence, the unstable decisions, and they label the person as crazy. But what the world doesn't see is the long, painful road that led them there. A person doesn't lose themselves overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, piece by piece, until the mind can no longer carry what the heart has endured for too long. Behind every broken person, there's a brutal story that was never told in full. And the truth is, no one wakes up and chooses chaos. Most of the time, they just spent years surviving storms that no one else noticed. There are people who grew up in homes where love was something you had to earn and peace was something you never got. They learned to stay quiet to avoid punishment, to hide pain so it wouldn't be used against them, to pretend they were fine so adults could keep ignoring the truth. These early wounds don't heal just because someone grows older. They follow the person into adulthood, shaping how they trust, how they love, how they react, and how they break. Sometimes the brutal past includes physical pain, sometimes emotional scars, and sometimes it's the silent kind of trauma, the loneliness, the neglect, the feeling of never being enough. These things stay buried deep until one day they don't. And then there are people who were betrayed by the ones they trusted most, friends who turned into enemies, partners who lied, family who walked away when they were needed the most. Each betrayal teaches the mind a new lesson. Don't trust too easily. Don't open up too fast. Don't believe promises. Slowly, the heart becomes heavy, the mind becomes tired, and the person becomes someone they don't even recognize. When the world sees their anger, they don't see the nights the person cried alone. When they see the outbursts, they don't see the years of holding everything in. When they see instability, they don't see the weight of the memories that pushed them there. Sometimes the brutal past includes loss. Losing people, losing dreams, losing the version of yourself you thought you would grow into. Grief changes the brain, and constant heartbreak can twist a person's sense of reality. You start questioning everything. Your worth, your future, your relationships, your purpose. And when life keeps hitting a person without giving them space to breathe, their mind begins to crack under the pressure. Not because they are weak, but because they have been strong for too long. So when someone goes crazy, it is rarely madness. It is exhaustion. It is pain. It is trauma. It is the echo of every moment they had to survive alone. And if people look deeper, they would find a story so heavy that anyone, absolutely anyone, might break under the same weight. If you're finding this story powerful, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and stay connected so you never miss the videos that open your mind and touch your heart. There are people who walk around carrying a past so painful that even their shadow seems heavier than others. You can't tell by looking at them, because they've mastered the art of hiding their wounds behind forced smiles and quiet behavior. But deep inside, their mind is a battlefield where memories never really die. They just wait for the right moment to come back and tear everything apart again. A person with a brutal past doesn't go crazy out of nowhere. Most of the time, they have spent years trying to hold themselves together while the world kept pushing them closer to the edge. They remember the nights when they couldn't sleep because their thoughts were screaming louder than their voice. They remember the days where they felt like they were moving through life on autopilot, pretending everything was normal when nothing was. And the saddest part is that people around them still expect them to behave like someone who never experienced anything traumatic. That constant pressure to act fine, to appear strong, to stay positive, slowly turns into emotional suffocation. When a mind is forced to carry trauma in silence, the silence eventually becomes louder than the pain itself. What most people don't understand is how trauma rewires the brain. It changes how a person reacts, how they trust, how they interpret even the smallest situations. Someone who has been hurt repeatedly becomes hyper-aware of danger, even when nothing is wrong. A simple argument feels like abandonment. A loud voice feels like a threat. A small misunderstanding feels like the beginning of another painful chapter. So when they respond strongly or break down suddenly, people judge them. They call them dramatic, unstable, sensitive, or irrational. But no one stops to ask why their reaction is so intense. No one wonders what experience taught them to fear things so deeply. Their brutal past becomes invisible to the world, even though it is still painfully alive inside them. And this is exactly how a person slowly loses themselves. when their pain is real, but the world refuses to believe it. There are people who have spent their whole lives being controlled, manipulated, or emotionally crushed by others. They never learned what healthy love feels like. So now every relationship turns into a test. They get scared when someone comes too close because closeness once meant danger. They push people away not because they don't want love, but because love once betrayed them so badly that their mind built walls higher than their hopes. And when these walls finally start to crack under the pressure of loneliness, the person feels like they're losing control of their thoughts, their emotions, their identity. It is not madness. It is a survival mechanism breaking down after years of overuse. Anyone with such a past would struggle to stay stable. Anyone living in constant fear of being hurt again would eventually feel like their mind is slipping away from them. And this deep internal chaos is what the world wrongly calls crazy. There comes a point in a person's life when the past stops being just a memory and starts becoming a threat that follows them everywhere. Someone who has lived through brutal experiences begins to see danger even in safe places, because their brain has been trained to expect the worst. They don't trust peace. Peace feels like the calm before another storm. So even when life finally gives them a moment of relief, their mind whispers, "Don't relax, it won't last." This constant fear becomes a prison where the person feels trapped inside their own thoughts. They start overthinking every word, every expression, every silence around them. A normal conversation becomes a mental puzzle they keep replaying, trying to find hidden meaning. A small change in someone's tone becomes a sign that something terrible is about to happen. And while people around them casually live their lives, this person is fighting invisible battles every second of the day. It's exhausting emotionally, mentally, and physically. That exhaustion piles up until the person feels like they're losing control of their mind. But instead of getting help or understanding, they're told to calm down or stop overreacting, which only pushes them deeper into the darkness they're already drowning in. The brutal past of such a person doesn't just shape their fears. It shapes their anger too. When someone has been hurt repeatedly, their heart becomes a pressure cooker filled with emotions they never got to express. Anger, sadness, disappointment, confusion. They learn to swallow their pain because speaking up only caused more trouble. But emotions don't disappear just because they are suppressed. They build up over time until one day they explode. And when that explosion happens, people judge the outburst, but never the years of silent suffering that led to it. They label the person as unstable without realizing that this instability is actually a cry for help, a sign that the emotional burden has become too heavy to carry alone. The world sees the reaction but ignores the cause. They see a person who has lost it, but not the years of abuse, neglect, heartbreak, or betrayal that slowly pushed them to their breaking point. What hurts the most is that the person often blames themselves for the way they feel. They think they should be stronger, more controlled, more normal. They feel ashamed for reacting emotionally, for crying easily, for getting angry suddenly. But their reactions are not a flaw. They are scars. Scars that were never given time to heal. And when these scars get touched through a harsh word, a painful memory, or a stressful situation, the mind responds with intensity because it remembers the original wound. This is why the person seems unpredictable to others. They are not unpredictable. They are simply triggered by pain no one else can see. And living with that kind of internal hurricane makes anyone feel like they're losing themselves piece by piece. There is a moment in every wounded person's life when the past stops being something behind them and starts becoming something that controls everything ahead of them. They try to move forward, but every step feels like they're dragging the weight of old memories tied to their ankles. A person who has lived through brutality doesn't simply remember the pain. They relive it. A sound, a sentence, a smell, or even a small change in someone's expression can pull them back into a moment they spent years trying to escape. Their mind keeps replaying scenes that should have ended long ago. But trauma has a strange way of keeping a person stuck in time. This creates a constant feeling of emotional whiplash, where one part of them wants to be normal and the other part is still fighting a war that ended on the outside but continues inside. And this inner conflict slowly chips away at their stability, making them feel like they're losing control of their own thoughts, even when they're desperately trying to hold themselves together. People who carry brutal pasts often become experts at pretending. They laugh at the right time, act strong when they are trembling on the inside, and keep conversations light so no one notices how heavy their heart actually is. But the more they pretend, the more disconnected they feel from themselves. It's like living behind a mask that becomes harder to take off every day. Eventually, the mask starts cracking, and when it does, the person feels exposed, vulnerable, and terrified. This fear of being seen, truly seen, makes them pull away from others, even when they need them the most. They isolate themselves to avoid judgment, but the loneliness that follows becomes another kind of torture. In that empty space, their mind becomes louder, their thoughts become sharper, and every memory becomes a knife cutting deeper than before. And when the pain becomes too much, the person might break down in ways that look dramatic to others, but are actually the result of years of silent endurance. The brutal past also convinces them that they don't deserve good things. They push away love because they've been taught that love hurts. They avoid opportunities because failure feels familiar. They sabotage happiness because their mind whispers that happiness is temporary. This constant self-doubt creates mental chaos that others misinterpret as mood swings or irrational behavior. But if someone looked closely, they would see a person fighting a battle they don't even know how to explain. Imagine trying to build a peaceful life on top of emotional ruins. No matter how hard you try, the old structure keeps shaking the new one. And when the shaking becomes too intense, the world calls it crazy, not realizing that what they're witnessing is a human being trying to survive the echoes of a past that refuses to die. If this story is touching something deep inside you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because these words are not just explanations. They are reflections of real people, real pain, and real experiences that deserve to be understood. What many people don't realize is that a brutal past doesn't just damage the heart. It reshapes the entire identity of a person. Someone who once dreamed freely now second-guesses every thought. Someone who once trusted easily now studies every detail, searching for signs of danger that may not even exist. Their mind becomes a survival machine, always scanning, always alert, always prepared for the next hurt. This constant state of hypervigilance is exhausting, but it becomes their normal. They don't even notice how drained they are because they've lived like this for so long. And when exhaustion grows uncontrollable, the person begins to break in ways that the world interprets as instability. They might cry for reasons they can't explain, snap at small things, or withdraw suddenly as if the world has become too heavy to face. But these reactions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a mind that has been forced to stay strong for far too many years without rest, reassurance, or safety. Sometimes a person tries to rebuild their life, but rebuilding becomes a slow, painful process because the foundation beneath them is cracked. They try to form new relationships, but the ghosts of past betrayal whisper doubts in their ear. They try to heal, but healing feels like touching a wound that has never fully closed. They try to forget, but forgetting feels impossible when triggers are everywhere. Every attempt to grow turns into a battle, and every battle reminds them of old losses. This constant cycle creates a feeling of hopelessness, like no matter how far they move forward, the past is always one step behind them. And when hope fades, the mind becomes a maze with no exit, leading a person to question their worth, their sanity, and sometimes even their will to continue carrying such a heavy emotional load. People often say move on, but they don't understand that moving on is not a switch, it's a struggle. A person with a brutal past doesn't lack strength. They lack safe spaces. They don't lack willpower. They lack someone who listens without judgment. They don't lack stability. They lack memories that reassure them they are safe now. So when their emotions begin to overflow, when their reactions become intense, when their thoughts spiral, the world sees it as losing control. But in reality, it is the mind finally releasing everything it held inside after years of forced silence. This release can look messy, loud, or frightening, but it is human. It is what happens when a person has spent their whole life surviving instead of living. When a person with a brutal past reaches their breaking point, it usually happens quietly at first. They stop laughing the way they used to. Their eyes lose a certain light, and their voice becomes softer, as if they're afraid of being heard. Inside, they are collapsing, but outside, they keep functioning because that's what they were trained to do. They don't know how to rest, how to ask for help, or how to trust someone with their vulnerability. So instead, they try to manage everything alone until their mind can no longer carry the weight. And when that moment comes, the breakdown feels sudden to everyone else, but to the person, it feels like the final crack in a wall that has been breaking for years. Their emotions begin to pour out uncontrollably. Anger mixed with sadness, fear mixed with confusion, memories mixed with reality. It becomes difficult for them to separate what is happening now from what happened long ago. Their reactions become intense, unpredictable, and sometimes overwhelming, not because they have lost touch with reality, but because reality has become tangled with every painful memory they never healed from. In these moments, the world is quick to judge. People say they are crazy, overly emotional, or dangerous, but they don't see the years of pain that led to this point. They don't see the trust that was broken, the people who walked away, the promises that were empty, or the innocence that was stolen. They don't see the child who grew up too fast, the teenager who felt alone, or the adult who pretended to be strong because they had no other choice. Every breakdown has a story, and every story has truth. But the world rarely cares for the truth behind someone's suffering. It is easier to judge the reaction than to understand the wound. And that misunderstanding deepens the person's loneliness, pushing them further into emotional isolation where they feel unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. The saddest part is that many people who go crazy are not weak. They are incredibly strong. They have survived things that would break most people. They have endured pain in silence, stayed loyal when they were betrayed, and kept moving forward when the world gave them every reason to give up. Their mind didn't break because they were fragile. It broke because they were forced to be strong for too long. And when strength turns into survival mode, and survival mode becomes a lifelong habit, the mind eventually reaches a point where it can't continue without releasing the emotional weight it has been carrying. That release looks chaotic on the outside, but on the inside it is the beginning of healing, the moment where the person finally lets out what they've been holding in for years. It is painful, messy, and misunderstood, but it is real. And if someone took the time to listen instead of judging, they would realize that crazy is just another word the world uses for a person who has suffered more than they can explain. In the end, the brutal past of a person who seems to go crazy is not a story of madness. It is a story of survival. It is the journey of someone who walked through fire when everyone else walked away. It is the quiet resilience of a heart that kept beating even when it was shattered. When you truly understand the weight of what they carried, you begin to see their reactions differently. You realize their anger was a shield, their silence was a cry for help, their breakdown was a release, and their instability was the natural result of years spent trying to stay stable for everyone else. No one sees how many times they forced themselves to get up when they wanted to stay down. No one sees how many nights they stayed awake, fighting their own mind. No one sees the courage it takes to heal wounds that were never their fault. But healing always begins with understanding. And sometimes all a person needs is someone who doesn't judge their storm, but understands why the storm exists in the first place. So before labeling someone as crazy, try to imagine the battles they fought alone, the fears they swallowed, and the memories they couldn't escape. Try to see the human behind the reaction. Because the truth is, anyone with a brutal past can break, and anyone who breaks can heal. But only in a world that listens instead of judging, and supports instead of shaming. Compassion can save someone who is drowning silently. Kindness can make them believe in themselves again. And understanding can remind them that they are not defined by the pain they lived through, but by the strength it took to survive it. And if you want to hear more stories that open minds, heal hearts, and make you see people differently, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay connected, and continue this journey with us. Because someone out there needs these words more than you know.